The first thing my sister said before the turkey had even cooled on the platter was, "You've been hiding money from us." Just like that. No greeting. No blessing. No grace. Just a sharp public accusation that sliced through the room louder than any carving knife ever could. Before I begin, ask yourself one thing. What would you do if the people you loved most showed you their true intentions? If you believe every story deserves honesty, stay with me to the end. I remember the way the ceiling fan hummed above us, circulating the smell of roasted garlic and cinnamon pies through the dining room. It should have felt warm, festive, familiar. Instead, it felt like the air thickened around me, heavy enough to press against my chest. I didn't respond right away. I simply placed my fork down very gently, as if any sudden movement might shatter whatever version of family we were pretending to be. Everyone's eyes turned to me, slowly, almost hungrily, like they were waiting for the show to begin. And I sat there, calm, too calm, because what my sister didn't know was that I wasn't nearly as defenseless as she believed. I had learned long ago how to hold my face still while my mind arranged itself into a plan. It was a skill life had forced on me. $11 million, she continued louder, making sure every person at the table could hear her. Even the children stopped talking. I saw my nephew's spoon freeze midair. I saw my brother-in-law sit up straighter as if he needed to hear the number again. And I saw my daughter's eyebrows lift just slightly. A reaction so small most people would have missed it, but not me. I know her tells. I know them all. But what unsettled me most wasn't the accusation itself. It was the rehearsed rhythm in my sister's voice. The steady rise and fall. The way she leaned back in her chair afterward, waiting like a teacher pausing for a student to admit guilt. She didn't stumble over the number. She didn't hesitate. Which meant she didn't just discover anything today. She had planned this. I folded the napkin on my lap, smoothing each edge with slow, deliberate movements. When someone expects you to panic, staying calm becomes its own kind of power. "What are you talking about, Sarah?" I asked softly, steadying my voice even though a small tremor wanted to break through. My age has taught me that quiet questions often reveal far more than loud confrontations. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, her bracelets clinking against the wood. "Don't pretend you don't know. We found out. All of us." Her gaze slid around the room as if gathering support. "And we agreed you should share. It's only fair." Fair. That word has a different meaning when it comes from someone who's already decided what they think you owe them. The room felt smaller. Hotter. The overhead lights cast sharp shadows on everyone's faces, making their expressions look harsher than usual. My heart beat calmly, surprisingly calmly, like it had known this moment was coming long before I consciously recognized it. I didn't show shock. I didn't show fear. Instead, I tilted my head slightly, the way you do when you're listening closely, watching closely, already steps ahead. "I didn't know we were discussing finances today," I replied gently, letting the slightest hint of amusement color my voice. It wasn't enough to sound mocking, just enough to sound unshaken. That bothered them. I saw it instantly. My cousin shifted uncomfortably. My daughter exchanged a glance with her husband. My sister's jaw twitched just once before she masked it with a pitying smile. "You know what I went through as a child," Sarah said, lowering her voice to something fragile and practiced. "My illness, my surgeries, Mom and Dad spending everything on me. You owe me after everything." There it was, the emotional card she'd held on to her whole life, ready to slam on the table whenever she wanted something. I had spent decades forgiving her for using it. Today I felt something colder. Something final. But I didn't let it show. "Not yet. I'm sorry you feel that way," I said. And I was, just not in the way she assumed. Around us, dishes clinked, chairs squeaked, the heater clicked on. Ordinary sounds, but everything felt stretched thin like a thread pulled too tight. Something had shifted the moment she said, "We found out." That meant this wasn't just her. This was a group effort. Only then did I notice the details I'd brushed off when I first arrived. The way my daughter had opened the door without hugging me first. The way everyone was already seated as if waiting for me to take my place before starting something. The empty chair near the end, pulled slightly back from the table, like someone had been sitting there earlier discussing something quietly. I scanned the table again, slower this time. My brother-in-law's phone was face down but tilted toward me, an odd angle if someone was trying to hide a recording. My niece kept glancing at her mother, waiting for cues. My daughter was biting the inside of her cheek, a habit she had only when she was keeping a secret. This wasn't spontaneous outrage. This was a coordinated ambush. You kept money from the family, my nephew said suddenly, as if repeating a line he was told to memorize. I didn't even look at him. I looked at my daughter instead. Is this how all of you feel? I asked quietly. He swallowed. Her eyes flicked toward her husband, who gave her a tiny nod, as if encouraging her to stick to whatever script they had agreed upon before I arrived. Yes, she said finally. It's not right to keep something so big to yourself. We could have helped you manage it. Manage it. As if I were some fragile old woman incapable of counting her own pennies. I smiled then, just a small, tired smile, because her choice of words told me everything. She didn't want to manage it with me. She wanted to manage it instead of me. Pass the gravy, I said softly, surprising everyone, even myself. My calmness unsettled them more than any anger could have. People who expect you to break don't know what to do when you stay whole. My sister scoffed. You're not taking this seriously. I'm taking everything seriously, I replied, lifting my eyes to hers until she looked away first. That was new. She rarely looked away. We ate in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Forks scraping, glasses clinking, the heater blowing warm air that did little to thaw the frost spreading between us. Then I noticed something else. The file folder sitting half-hidden beside my sister's chair. It was thick, overstuffed, and labeled. I didn't lean to read it. I didn't ask about it. But I saw enough of the top page to recognize my handwriting. An old signature from a form I must have filled out years ago. So they had documents. Copies. Maybe even access to something I hadn't realized anyone else could see. A small, cold sensation crept down my spine, but not fear. But realization. They had been preparing for this for longer than I had imagined. You know, my sister said lightly, lifting her glass, this is a good thing. We'll all be closer after this. Families share. Families also ask, I replied. Not demand. She laughed, a brittle, humorless sound. You wouldn't have given it unless we forced you to. There was the truth slipping out. And it hit me all at once. They didn't love me. They loved what they thought I could give them. My breathing stayed steady, but something inside me went utterly still, like a switch had flipped. Not anger. Not sadness. Something finer. Sharper. Awareness. The kind of awareness that comes right before a storm. My sister took another sip of wine and then added, We're meeting tomorrow to discuss how you'll divide it. Divide it. Not if, but how. She looked so sure, so comfortable, as if she believed the decision had already been made. I lifted my napkin again, brushing crumbs from my lap, and met her gaze. We'll talk soon, I said. For simple words. Calm. Controlled. But my tone made her flinch. Just a flicker, so fast anyone else would have missed it. But I didn't miss anything anymore. Because Thanksgiving was no longer a holiday. It was the moment I realized my own family had turned into a trap. One they thought I would walk into blindly. They had no idea I had already begun mapping my way out. And they certainly didn't know that I never entered a trap without remembering where the exits were. Not once. I didn't go home angry that night. I went home quiet, very quiet. The kind of quiet that settles into your bones and forces you to listen more carefully than you ever have before. The sky was already dark when I stepped onto my porch, and the November air held that sharp bite that creeps through your coat no matter how well it's buttoned. I locked the door behind me, turned on the lamp by the living room window, and stood there for a long moment, letting the silence of my house remind me who I was when no one was watching. We'll talk soon. That was the last thing I'd told my sister. He thought it was a surrender. But really it was the first move of something much larger. I placed my purse on the table and noticed my hands weren't shaking, even though a few hours earlier, every person at that table had tried to corner me. In a strange way, their confidence had steadied me. They believed they had already won. They believed age made me soft. They believed kindness made me weak. They were wrong about all of it. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a cup of chamomile tea, and sat near the window where the porch light spilled a warm circle onto the ground outside. My house had always been my sanctuary, the one place I could breathe freely. That night it became something else. A war room. A place where strategy mattered more than emotion. As I sipped my tea, I replayed the dinner in my mind. Not the accusations or the raised voices, but the details. Small details most people might have missed. My sister's file folder. My daughter's nervous glances. The way the family had been seated before I arrived, like they had rehearsed positions. Even the script-like sentences they used. All clues that this wasn't a spontaneous explosion of frustration. They had planned every word. If they had spent weeks, or months, preparing for this moment, then I needed far more than anger to respond. I needed patience, composure, careful timing. The next morning, the group text started before the sun came up. My daughter. Mom, we should meet today. My sister. Everyone is free at noon. We'll come to your place. My niece. We can help you organize everything. Doesn't have to be stressful. Organize. Help. Not subtle. I didn't reply immediately. I took a deep breath, opened the curtains slightly, and watched the first thin line of sunlight lift the darkness outside. There's a clarity that comes with morning. The kind that doesn't ask you to be strong, only awake. And I was awake in every way that mattered. My phone buzzed again. My daughter-in-law this time. This is a good opportunity for the whole family, Mom. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. That was the moment I knew I needed to take control of the narrative before they twisted it into something else entirely. So I answered. I need a little time. I'm processing. Let's meet later this week. I'll think about everything you said. I read the message 3 times. It was honest, but it was also bait. The kind of bait people take when they believe you're overwhelmed enough to yield. I didn't send it until my hands felt steady enough to press the button. The replies came back fast. Too fast. Good. Glad you're finally listening. We can make this smooth. We'll talk details soon. They were already convinced I was folding. And I let them believe every word of it. Later that afternoon, I put on my coat, slipped into a pair of comfortable shoes and walked to a local cafe. Somewhere quiet where the sound of steaming milk and clinking cups created a buffer around private conversations. I'd been coming here for years, and the barista, a young woman with kind eyes, smiled the moment she saw me. Your usual? She asked. I nodded and took a seat by the window. When my tea arrived, I pulled out the card I'd kept in my purse for years. My lawyer's business card. He'd helped me after my husband passed, guiding me through financial decisions I barely understood at the time. I'd always trusted him, not because he spoke like an attorney, but because he spoke like a person who understood loss and responsibility in equal measure. I dialed the number. He picked up on the second ring. This is Daniel. It's me, I said. I think we need to talk. There was a pause. Is everything all right? No, I said. But I'm going to make it all right. He didn't ask more over the phone. He told me to come in the next morning. When I arrived at his office, a modest building with beige stone walls and a faint smell of paper and old books, his assistant greeted me warmly and led me to a room that overlooked a small garden. The leaves had turned gold, carpeting the ground like a quiet reminder that seasons change whether we want them to or not. Daniel entered with a soft smile. Tell me what happened. I told him everything. Every word. Every look. Every detail. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rush me. He simply listened, leaning forward with his elbows on the desk, nodding slowly as the full weight of my story settled between us. When I finished, he exhaled. They cornered you. Yes. And they think you'll give in. They do. He tapped a pen against a pad. But you won't. No, I said quietly. I won't. He asked me a series of questions. Financial, legal, personal. Things that forced me to think deeper than anger. Things that reminded me I had more control than they believed. Do you want protection from them? He asked. I nodded. More than protection. I want clarity. I want things to be settled. He understood immediately. Some people spend their lives reading documents. He spent his life reading people. There are legal steps we can take, he said. And you can start today. So I did. I spent the next hour reviewing forms. Not the cold, confusing kind. He translated everything into simple terms I could understand. He explained how certain structures worked, what safeguards existed, and how to make decisions that couldn't be altered or manipulated by anyone else. By the time we were done, a plan existed. A fragile one at first, but a plan nonetheless. As I left his office, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel so soon. Lightness. Not joy. Not triumph. Just the steady relief of knowing I wasn't walking into battle unarmed. The following days became a careful dance. My family thought I was hesitating because I was overwhelmed. But really I was gathering everything I needed. I saved every message they sent. Every guilt-ridden paragraph. Every subtle threat disguised as concern. I stopped answering phone calls but replied to texts just enough to appear uncertain, pliable, nearly persuaded. One night my daughter left a voicemail, her tone strained but practiced. "Mom, please don't complicate this. We're only thinking about what's best." It's best. Always what's best for them. Meanwhile, I met with Daniel again, this time to review updated documents. We added statements. Clarified intentions. Closed loopholes. Every step felt like stitching a seam that had been torn too many times. He asked me if I wanted to send formal notices to my family. "No," I said firmly. "I wanted to show them myself. I wanted them to see my face when they learned they had misread me so completely." Back at home, I found comfort in small routines. Watering my plants, folding laundry, sorting through recipes I'd collected over the years. Ordinary tasks that helped me stay grounded. One evening, as I stood near the kitchen window watching a neighbor's dog chase fallen leaves, I felt an unexpected swell of gratitude. Not for what my family had done but for what it awakened in me. A sharpness. A clarity. A quiet strength I thought had faded with age. But age doesn't take strength. It refines it. My family, meanwhile, grew bolder in their confidence. My sister texted daily, "We'll guide you. We're all in this together." My daughter sent spreadsheets outlining potential distributions. My nephew suggested investments we could all benefit from. Every message was a gift, proof of their intentions recorded in their own words. They were already celebrating my weakness. What they didn't know was that I was finally, carefully, deliberately preparing to show them that I had none. Not the kind they believed anyway. And certainly not the kind they could take advantage of. That thought stayed with me the entire night, echoing softly in the quiet of my bedroom. When morning came, I didn't wake with dread. I woke with purpose. I slipped out of bed, felt the cool wooden floor beneath my feet, and let the early sun warm my face through the curtains. It was the kind of morning that whispered new beginnings even when nothing felt new on the outside. I made tea the same way I always did. 2 tea bags for strength, a tiny spoonful of honey, the mug warmed between my palms. As the kettle clicked off, a small certainty settled inside me. It was time. Time to stop letting them shape my story. Time to sign the documents that would draw the line they'd never be able to cross again. Daniel had already prepared everything. We'd spent days building the structure carefully, layer by layer. Today all that was left was the final signature, the one that would seal the choices I had made. I slipped on a cardigan, locked my door and stepped into the cold morning air. The sky was still waking up, brushed with soft pink light that stretched across the quiet street. I walked slowly, breathing in the stillness before the day began in full. On mornings like this I felt every one of my years, but not in a way that made me feel old. In a way that reminded me I had survived too much to be cornered now. The drive to Daniel's office took less than 20 minutes, but the tension in my chest tightened with each mile. Not dread, no, that had passed. This was something calmer. Something like resolve settling into place. When I arrived, his assistant smiled warmly. "Good morning. He's ready for you." As she led me down the hallway, I noticed the faint scent of lemon polish lingering in the air and the soft hum of printers behind closed doors. Everything felt still, like the world outside didn't exist. When we reached Daniel's office, he stood up from his desk. "You look steady," he said. "That's good." "I am steady," I replied. "Let's finish this." He nodded and motioned for me to sit. The folder was already on the desk. A simple black binder that held decades of my life, my decisions, my boundaries, my voice. He opened it carefully, turning the pages with a gentleness that felt more like respect than routine. "There are a few final sections to review," he said, sliding the binder toward me. I ran my fingers over the thick, clean pages. The paper felt cool, crisp, heavy with meaning. Not once in my life had I imagined I'd be signing documents to protect myself from my own family. But life often teaches you things you never signed up to learn. As I read the first section, a wave of calm washed over me. This wasn't revenge. This was preservation. Daniel explained each clause slowly. How the trust secured all my assets. How the will would reflect my decisions without ambiguity. How every detail was structured so no one could alter it later. He was thorough, patient, clear. And with every sentence he read, I felt the tension in my shoulders ease a little more. When we reached the section listing my beneficiaries, I paused. It wasn't a long list. It wasn't meant to be. I left specific bequests to charities that had supported me or touched my life in quiet, humble ways. A small donation to the local library. Another to a women's shelter I had visited years ago. And one to a community gardening program I admired. Then came the section that named my family. $1 each. A legal formality. A final statement shaped in ink. I wanted to be clear, I told Daniel. Not out of spite. Just clarity. He nodded. This states exactly what you want. And why? We added the notarized affidavit detailing their pressure, their threats, their coordinated attempts to force me into decisions against my will. Not dramatic. Not exaggerated. Just facts. Calm, simple, undeniable. While he organized the final pages, I leaned back slightly in my chair. Through the window, I could see the first signs of winter settling in. Bare branches against a pale sky. Leaves scattered like old stories across the ground. It struck me then that we often think we owe people because of shared blood or shared history. But life has shown me that sometimes the people who share your roof or your childhood can be strangers in the worst ways. When Daniel placed the pen before me, I felt the weight of every moment that had led to this one. Not just Thanksgiving. Not just their demands. But the years of small cuts, dismissive comments, manipulations, guilt trips, subtle power plays. Years of being the reliable one. The forgiving one. The one who always bent so no one else had to. My hand hovered over the page for a moment. Not because I doubted my decision, but because I wanted to remember the feeling of choosing myself in full. I signed. My name flowed across the page as steadily as my heart beat. With each stroke of ink, something inside me loosened, like invisible chains falling quietly to the ground. When I finished the last signature, the finality of it settled into my chest with a strange mixture of relief and grief. Not grief for them, but grief for the version of me who had spent too long hoping they'd treat me better. Daniel gathered the pages. It's done. I let out a slow breath. Good. He looked at me gently. How are you feeling? I paused, searching for the right word. Free. Like I've come back to myself. He smiled. You've made strong, intelligent decisions. I nodded, but inside I felt more than strength. I felt a quiet fierceness I hadn't felt in decades. The kind that comes from knowing your boundaries, your worth, your power. The kind of fierceness that doesn't need to be loud. When I stepped out of the office building, the chill in the air hit me, but I didn't pull my coat tighter. I welcomed it. The cold, the clarity, the clean slate of the day ahead. As I walked toward my car, my phone buzzed. A message from my sister. We're ready to meet whenever you are. Let's finalize things. Finalize. Such a confident word for someone who had no idea she was already written out of my future. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I drove to a small park near my home. It was quiet on weekdays, mostly empty except for a few elderly couples walking their dogs and a mother pushing a stroller along the paved path. I sat on a bench watching a flock of birds scatter from a tree, their wings beating like soft, hurried whispers. For a moment, I let myself feel the heaviness of what had happened. I didn't like conflict. I never had. But standing up for yourself, especially at my age, often feels like conflict even when it's simply honesty. A light breeze rustled the branches above me. I pulled my coat tighter, leaning back against the cold bench. The world around me felt strangely peaceful, like the quiet before a storm you know you're strong enough to face. As I watched the people passing by, the subtle truth settled deeper inside me. This wasn't about money. It never had been. It was about respect. About love. About people who had taken my kindness and shaped it into something to exploit. And now, with one set of signatures, I had finally taken that power back. When I returned home, there were more messages waiting. Requests for updates, reminders to think positively, even a photo my niece sent of a house she claimed our family could invest in. They had no idea. I placed the phone face down on the counter and made myself another cup of tea. The simple act felt grounding, like reclaiming the rhythm of my life. One small choice at a time. As I stirred the honey into the steaming cup, I whispered to myself, they'll see soon enough. Not with cruelty. Not with joy. But with the quiet certainty of someone who had been underestimated for too long. I carried my tea to the living room, turned on a soft lamp, and sat in my favorite chair. The weight of the signed documents still lingered like a shield around me. A shield I had built myself. What came next would not be easy. But it would be right. And for the first time in a long time that was enough. With that thought still steadying my heart, I picked up my phone the next morning and typed a message to the family group chat. Short, simple, polite. Let's meet tomorrow at my house. 3 p.m. We'll discuss everything then. The replies came quickly like birds flocking to crumbs. Perfect. Finally. We'll be there. No hesitation. No courtesy. Not even a token question like, are you sure? They were ready to collect what they believed was theirs. The next day the house felt different as I prepared it. Not frightening, not heavy, just different. I dusted the dining table, arranged chairs neatly around it, and opened the curtains so sunlight filled the room. I didn't want shadows. I wanted clarity. The truth always sits better in the light. At exactly 2:45 p.m. I laid the thick folder on the table. The same black binder Daniel had handed me just a day before. Its weight felt solid in my hands. Righteous. Necessary. I placed it in front of the chair where I planned to sit, and then I stood back for a moment, studying the room the way someone examines a stage before a performance. Not a performance of lies. A performance of truth. At 3:02 the front door opened without knocking. My sister, of course. She stepped in with the boldness of someone entering a property she believed she already owned. "We're here," she called, her voice echoing through my hallway as she removed her coat with a flourish. I walked into the entryway slowly. "You're early," I said evenly. She smiled, tight and impatient. "It's a big day. A big day." The certainty in her tone would have stunned me weeks ago. Today it only sharpened my focus. Behind her came my daughter and son-in-law, then my niece, nephew and cousin. Each one carried notebooks, pens and folders, as if they were attending a finance meeting, not stepping into my home to demand a woman's life savings. "We'll sit in the dining room," I said, gesturing politely. They filed in, taking their seats with the confidence of people preparing to divide something already won. My daughter sat beside my sister. They exchanged a quick glance. Something rehearsed. Something aligned. I took my seat last, smoothing the corner of the tablecloth before settling in. My hands were steady. My breath even. They didn't notice. My sister leaned forward immediately, clasping her hands like a CEO ready to open a meeting. "All right," she said. "Let's get started. We've been planning how to help you handle this responsibly." Responsibly. Her favorite word when she intended to take control. My daughter cleared her throat. "We drafted a distribution plan," she said. "Something that benefits everyone fairly." I didn't reply. I simply watched them, my silence giving them the space to reveal themselves fully. My nephew slid a paper toward me, an outline of how to divide my funds between them. My niece added a color-coded spreadsheet detailing projects they wanted to improve the family's future. And my son-in-law unfolded a printed contract for management support. The arrogance would have been almost comical if it weren't so heartbreaking. My sister took out the last sheet, a handwritten list titled, "Mom's Contribution Plan." Beneath it were line items. Mortgage payoff for Sarah. College fund for Emily's kids. Business investment for Mark. Renovations for Sandra. Vehicle upgrade for family use. Winter property purchase, group. My name wasn't on a single line. Not one. They didn't even pretend this was for me. I sat a little straighter. "You've all given this a lot of thought." My sister nodded, missing the tone entirely. "Of course. We're finally doing what's long overdue. You held on to that money too long. Now it's time to do right by the family." The family. Not our family. Just the family, as if I were a visitor in my own bloodline. I opened the black binder slowly. Their chatter died instantly. Papers rustled softly as I flipped to the first page. Not rushed, not dramatic. Just calmly turning to face the truth of what I had done. My daughter frowned. "What's that?" "A few things I've been working on," I said. My sister leaned forward, trying to peek. "We should look at it together. Transparency is important." "For you," I said quietly. "And today you'll get it." My nephew smirked, assuming victory. "Great. Let's finalize everything." I turned the binder toward them, opened to the notarized affidavit and folded my hands. "Before we finalize anything, you should read this." My sister grabbed the pages eagerly, too eagerly, and began reading. The expression on her face shifted within seconds. Her brows knit. Her lips tightened. Her hand shook faintly as she flipped to the next page. Then the next. "What is this?" she whispered. My daughter leaned in, reading over her shoulder. Her face went pale. My niece took the next document and gasped. $1. You left us each $1. My son-in-law grabbed the binder with a trembling hand. This can't be right. My sister pushed back from the table abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You're cutting us out?" "I'm protecting myself," I said gently. "You think we're dangerous?" she snapped. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult anyone. I simply gestured to the affidavit they were gripping with disbelief. "You made it very clear what you wanted from me," I said softly. "Very clear." My daughter's eyes filled, not with remorse but with panic. "Mom, you didn't understand. We just wanted to help." "To help yourselves," I corrected. She stood suddenly, knocking over her notebook. Papers scattered across the table. "You're being dramatic," she snapped. "We're family. This is what families do." "No," I said. "This is what you do. Not family." My nephew slammed his hand down. "So all the sacrifices we've made mean nothing to you?" "You didn't sacrifice anything," I replied calmly. "You planned to take everything." My sister's voice rose, shrill and cracking. "You're betraying us." I met her gaze, steady, clear, unwavering. "You betrayed me first." Silence hit the room like a winter gust. It stole their breath. It stole their excuses. It stole the illusion they had been clinging to. My niece sank into her chair, whispering, "I can't believe this." "You documented everything?" my son-in-law asked, incredulous. "Everything," I said. "Your messages. Your threats. Your plans." My daughter stared at me as if seeing me for the first time, not as the gentle woman she'd molded to her advantage, but as someone entirely different. My sister tried one last tactic, her voice softer, trembling. "I went through so much as a child. You know that." "I know," I said. "And I supported you then. But your past doesn't give you ownership over my future." Her face contorted, hurt and fury twisting together. "You'll regret this." "No," I replied, shaking my head. "For the first time in years I won't." The room crackled with tension, anger, disbelief, denial. They looked at the documents again, flipping pages wildly as if hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something more favorable. But they wouldn't. I had signed them with a steady hand and a clear mind. My daughter's voice broke. "So that's it? We get nothing." "You get peace," I said softly. "And boundaries." My sister slammed the binder shut. "Selfish," she spat. "Safe," I corrected. The difference mattered more than she would ever understand. For a long, breathless moment no one moved. The sunlight streamed across the table, catching the edges of the papers like a quiet spotlight. Dust particles floated in the air, glittering like flecks of truth neither of us could ignore. Finally my niece whispered, "Let's go." One by one they stood, defeated not by cruelty, not by revenge, but by reality itself. Chairs scraped. Coats rustled. Shoes clicked angrily across my floorboards. My sister was the last to leave. She lingered at the doorway, her voice low and shaking. "You'll die alone," she said. I looked at her gently. Better alone than surrounded by people who see me as a wallet. She didn't respond. She closed the door too hard, but not hard enough to shake me. The house sank into silence, the first peaceful silence in weeks. I exhaled slowly, the weight of years lifting like a curtain pulled away from a window. For the first time in a long time I felt the air belonged to me again. I stayed seated at the dining table, listening to the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. The sunlight had shifted slightly, sliding across the floorboards toward the hallway, as if even the light was moving on from the storm that had just passed. My hands rested calmly on the table, still and steady, while the echo of the slammed door slowly faded. They were gone. Finally gone. Not just from my house, but from the grip they had held over my life without me even realizing it. I knew they'd be back. Through calls, texts, maybe even uninvited visits. But something fundamental had broken today, not inside me but inside them. They had seen with their own eyes that I wasn't the frail, dependent woman they had convinced themselves I was. I had let them underestimate me. I had let them build entire fantasies around a version of me that didn't exist anymore. But now, Now those illusions lay shattered across my dining table like the scattered papers they had left in their haste. I stood slowly, pushing the chair back with a soft scrape. My legs felt strong. My steps were sure. I picked up the binder, smoothed the cover with my palm and carried it to my bedroom. I placed it gently in the top drawer of my dresser. Not hidden, not locked away, just resting there like a quiet declaration of freedom. When I returned to the living room, the house felt larger somehow. Taller. As if the walls themselves were relieved I was no longer shrinking inside them to accommodate other people's demands. I made myself a cup of tea, the familiar routine grounding me. As the steam curled upward, I held the warm mug close to my chest. My hands didn't tremble. My breath didn't catch. I felt steady. The phone on the counter buzzed. Once. Twice. Then again. I didn't reach for it. Only when the time stopped did I glance at the screen. 9 messages. All from my daughter. Call me. We need to talk. You can't be serious. This is wrong. Answer the phone. Message after message, building in intensity. The last one was only 2 words. How could you? I stared at that one for a long moment. How could I? How could I finally choose myself over the people who had spent years taking advantage of me? I tapped the screen, read each message again, and then did something I hadn't done in my entire life. Not once, not even when arguments got loud or feelings got hurt. I deleted the whole thread. No anger. No revenge. Just release. My hands felt lighter instantly. Later that evening I went for a walk. The cold December air stung my cheeks, but I welcomed it. It felt clean. Honest. I walked slowly past familiar houses, each one glowing with early holiday decorations. Twinkling lights. Wreaths. Families laughing inside their warm living rooms. I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. As I walked, the memories of the earlier confrontation kept drifting in, but this time they held no pain. Only clarity. I thought of my sister's face when she realized she'd been written out of my will. My daughter's panic when she understood I had documented everything. Their disbelief that I had the strength to stand against them. None of them had ever asked me what I wanted. They had only told me what they expected. But expectations crumble easily when they're built on greed. Halfway down the street my phone buzzed again. This time it was my sister. I didn't need to read the message to know the tone. Desperation has a way of squeezing itself into every word even before you open the text. I didn't open it. Instead I turned my phone off and slipped it into my coat pocket. When I returned home I sat on the couch and stared at the quiet room. For years, I'd believed peace came from keeping the family close, even when their closeness cost me my own well-being. But now I understood something deeper. Peace comes from honesty. Peace comes from boundaries. Peace comes from choosing yourself without apology. It was time to rebuild my life in a way that reflected that truth. The next morning I woke to a home that felt different. Not because anything had changed but because I had. I made breakfast, played soft music through the speakers, and opened the curtains to let the winter sunlight spill across the floor. My phone stayed off until noon. When I finally turned it back on, the flood of messages arrived all at once. Nearly 30 from my daughter, 12 from my sister, a handful from my niece and nephew, and even a missed call from a blocked number I strongly suspected was my son-in-law. They all had the same tone. Panic softened by entitlement. Anger wrapped in self-pity. Blame disguised as concern. Not a single apology. I read none of them. Instead, I opened a small wooden box I kept in my hallway closet. It held letters from old friends, postcards from places I visited years ago, and a few photographs of myself from younger days. Laughing, smiling, living without the weight of other people's demands on my shoulders. I sifted through them slowly, one by one, until my eyes landed on a picture of me standing by a lake during a camping trip with friends from a volunteer group. My smile was wide. Genuine. Free. I traced the edge of the photo with my fingertip. That woman had never disappeared. She had just been quiet, waiting for the noise around her to stop. As I put the photos back into the box, a sudden knock sounded at the door. A loud, impatient knock. I knew instantly who it was. I considered ignoring it, but something inside me, something newly strong, told me not to hide. Not ever again. So I opened the door. My daughter stood there, arms crossed tightly, her jaw set. "We need to talk," she said. "No," I replied softly. "You need to talk. I need to listen and decide." She blinked, thrown off by the firmness in my voice. Mom, this isn't right. What you did yesterday, you embarrassed us. Embarrassed. Not hurt. Not confused. Not worried. Is that what this is about? I asked quietly. Your embarrassment? Her face tightened. We just wanted to take care of you. No, I corrected gently. You wanted to take from me. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. But you're our mother. It's your responsibility to help your family. I've helped, I said. For years. In ways you never even noticed. But it was never enough for you, was it? Her shoulders sagged slightly, but her pride kept her upright. What happens now? A boundary, I said. A real one. She stared at me for a long moment, but she didn't argue. She didn't apologize either. She simply nodded once and walked away without looking back. I closed the door gently, not as an ending but as protection. For me. That evening I sat at the dining table again. The same one where they had all tried to carve me open like the holiday turkey. But now, with the soft glow of a single lamp illuminating the room, the table felt like mine again. And then quietly my phone buzzed with a single text. From a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. This is Linda from the community center. We'd love for you to come speak about your experience with financial boundaries. Women your age really need voices like yours. I stared at the message, warmth blooming in my chest. My story, my pain, my recovery, could help someone else. Maybe many women. Women who had been silenced, pressured, cornered. Women who thought age meant giving up control. I typed back. Yes. I'd be honored. When I set the phone down, I felt something inside me settle. Not pride. Not triumph. Just a soft, steady sense of purpose. What my family had intended for harm had become the foundation of something unexpectedly meaningful. A new chapter of strength, truth, and integrity. As the night deepened, I walked to the kitchen window and watched the moon rise over the quiet neighborhood. The street was still. Stars sparkled faintly above, tiny lights scattered across the dark sky. I took a deep breath. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their approval. I didn't even need their presence. Walking away had been my revenge. Standing firm had been my healing. Choosing myself had been my freedom. And as the moonlight washed over my kitchen floor, soft and silver, I whispered the truth out loud. I finally have my life back. And for the first time in decades, that was enough. If this story touched you or reminded you that strength sometimes comes in silence, subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me continue sharing the stories so many women carry quietly in their hearts. And tell me, where are you watching from today?